many small people who, in many small places, do many small things can alter the face of the world. It's an African proverb written in bold letters on the Berlin Wall between former East and West Germany. It is a border that fell because people believed in impossible, and they came together to make their impossible dream a reality. Their dream was to be safe and independent. Nearly 30 years have passed since then, but the dream of once did not die. The reason to flee might have changed, but the motivation behind it, to feel free and safe, did not. I went to Lesbos, an island in the Aegean Sea in Greece, where refugees arrived on stony beaches in the early morning hours. The people arriving there came from many different places: Syria, Iraq, Afghanistan, Eritrea, Congo, Iran, and many, many more. In all those places, the people did not feel free or safe. So they went on a year-long journey, and sometimes their journeys would be fatal. During their crossing, only pitch black water was beneath them. Crouched in overfilled, half-broken boats, with the certainty of close death in their minds. If these boats capsized or somebody fell overboard, there was barely a chance of survival. The life jackets they wore were more death traps than swimming aid. In under 2 minutes, these life jackets provided by the smugglers would soak up the water and drag the people down in the cold dark. When the people arrived, they were just in pure shock. They jumped off these unstable rubber dinghies and passed out on shore because of exhaustion. Sometimes we had as well fight because they were so scared of what just happened. They were traumatized between the crossing of Greece and Turkey. Back then, I hadn't had any special trainings, and it was the first time for me doing something like that. But I learned what to do just by being there. Anything is possible if you choose to not look away from what is happening and act. I was a swimming teacher on Lesbos for refugees. Maybe swimming doesn't sound like the most needed thing in a humanitarian crisis, but most people crossing the sea don't know how to swim. The water is seen as immediate death. Just standing in it caused massive panic and anxiety attacks. It was as well sometimes the only opportunity for them to find a bit of distraction from harsh and desperate living conditions they were faced with just every day. I once thought a guy swimming who was just twice the size as me. He was tall like a tree, but absolutely unable to stand in water. As soon as the water level came over his knee, all his muscles cramped up, and I had to hold him so he would not fall over and drown in knee-deep water. He was so scared of it and traumatized. But with time and patience, trust, he learned how to actually float on his back on a sea. And it was just pure relief for him, because his fear got replaced by a certain pride in what he could do. I had some swimming students who learned how to swim in 2 weeks. That is just incredible if you think about it. It is so important to give something like that so they can overcome the fear, because control over fears gives us well back a certain control over life. I had never ever before thought anybody swimming, let alone people I could not understand. But Anything is possible if you choose to not look away from what is happening and act. About the Mediterranean Sea, coast of Libya. In this room are around 400 people. The death rate in the Mediterranean Sea is right now 1 to 7. 57 of you would not make the crossing if you tried. You can look up and down from you. Every 7th of you would not be here anymore. My first position in the Mediterranean Sea was on a search and rescue vessel as translator and rescuer, 30 nautical miles off the Libyan coast. We trained hours after hours, how to hand off life jackets, how to calm and speak to people, and what to do in a shipwreck. Medical training after fire drill, and mission alarm. Our boat was 32 meters long and 50 years old, and it would be our home for the next 2 weeks. It is really hard to describe what I saw there, but I try. We found malnourished people crouching on top of each other in large rubber and small wooden boats. The construction to hold together these large rubber boats consisted of wooden planks with index finger long nails protruding out of them. In those 10-meter boats, there could be 100 or more people. You never knew, and they could just capsize, explode any second, any minute. The 40 horsepower engines to drive this boat had maybe fuel for 50 nautical miles. If they run out of fuel, they would just start drifting until they sank if they were not rescued. The cheap fuel to run these 40 horsepower engines were mixed, often leaked in the boat, and mixed with salty seawater caused it to soak through the clothes and dissolve the skin underneath. It was so aggressive. The people on board barely ever had food, most of them none. It was just more important to put more people on them than food, provision. Many of these people had no shoes on. They lost them somewhere in the journey over the Sahara to Libya. They told us these horrible stories of them being enslaved, being treated less than slaughterhouse animals. They had sometimes scars from torture, and sometimes they were imprisoned before they actually were able to do the crossing for many, many months, sometimes years, in overcrowded, horrible prisons. There was a lot of stories about as well rape and torture. In that time, for me, the biggest support was definitely our crew, because our crew, we talked about the bad things we saw, and even if we knew all this was so horrible, we as well knew that if we saw that, it was okay, because we were there and we helped. On my first mission, there were not many professional rescuers, me included, but we had the possibility to do it, so we did it, and anything is possible if you choose to not look away from what's happening and act. This past May, I was in a search aircraft in the Mediterranean Sea, and we were looking for missing rubber boats in this wide open space. This project was founded by amazing people who happened to have the possibility to fly a plane and a strong, strong will to help. So they looked, what can we do? And then they started this project with the aircraft, and they assisted wherever it was needed. My position now was totally different than before, because we flew maybe 300 meters above the sea and looked for these tiny little boats who were mere crumbles in an endless ocean. If you found them, it was always a huge relief, because it meant these people would not just vanish from this planet and add to the number of unknown deaths. It was just always so amazing to see them. In my mission, I could not rescue anybody. All we found were shipwrecks or people who were then illegally pushed back to Libya. But we were there and we saw what was happening and we documented it, because even just looking at them, because everybody deserves to be seen, mainly in a situation where the human rights are broken. The project now has solely saved over 1,000 people who would have died otherwise without them, and helped in the rescue of many thousand more. It's incredible. And it was only possible because these people who were not professional just started something and did not give up until they were. And anything is possible if you choose to not look away from what's happening and act. The last thing I have to say is you might not have the possibility to just leave, go away, and spend it with a big project. You might not have the time to do that either. Or you might not have the support to do what I did. But don't make an obstacle like a border, a wall, a language, or nationality stop you from helping people in need. Anything is possible. To not look away, because you always have the choice to not look away. And always keep in mind, anything is possible if you don't look away and act. Thank you very much.